Hello everyone, my name is Gerald Pancho, and today I'm going to talk about all the things I've learned about in the semester of my Java class. So this is my final exam presentation. So first things first, we need to learn about the class. The class is the general blueprint or the template of an object or entity you create represented through the code. So the methods and instance variables in that class completely relates to that object and simulates the object states and behavior. Essentially, it's the structure that combines all the building blocks of an object. So, along with the class, there's an object. These two get basically interchangeably mentioned hand to hand. And an object is essentially an instance of a class. It holds values derived from an actual object or real-life entities. It follows the same behavior of that object through the methods and variables. So here we have an example, a bank class that holds your account data and a money balance. The function of a bank account or a bank class would be basically to make transactions, right? Being able to withdraw and deposit from that balance. So another object example would be something like a person class, where some of its features or states would be like its name, its gender, its height, its weight, hair color, eye color, and stuff like that. Different things that represent a person. And some functions that person can do is like to eat, to run, to walk, or to, go to the bathroom, go to work. Different things that a person acts upon is basically an example of an object, which would be represented through a class. So before we get to the next slide, I want to make an example of a person class object. And so what I'm going to do is create a new Java project. I'm going to name the project person. I'm not going to create a module for it. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a new class. And that class will also be called person. This is essentially going to be the building area of our person. So what we want from a person, we want something like a name, right? So let's create a name. Alright, next. What do we want? A gender, sure. And what else? Maybe its age. We could do an int for that one. And so far, these are the different states a person can have. So now we need to know more about methods and member fields. A method is basically similar to a function that represents what the class does, and the behavior that class have is defined through the method. For example, a bank account would have the ability to make deposits and withdrawals from a balance. And it can also maybe show your balance history if you, the creator of that program, allows it. A member field or an instance variable is essentially representable data of that object, and the example of the bank account would be the name of your account and the amount of money is in your balance. So here, to relate to our person class, this are all instance variable or member fields because they represent the data of the person, its information. So now I want to create some functionalities for this person. Maybe I want to be able to set the name and display the name or gender or age of the person. So here I'm going to create a method. It's going to be public void display name. And what I'm essentially just going to do is output the name of this person by calling the instance variable name. And I'm going to do the same thing for gender and age. And as well as the age. But I also want to be able to input and create a person with data inputted from myself. So now I'm going to make a getter which allows me to fetch data and store it into the person class. So public void get name, and I'm going to add a parameter that is a string, and the name of this person will become. Now I'm going to do the same for gender and age, and then I'm going to use another class to be able to display all of this information. So another string, let's call it G, and gender is going to become whatever I input in that parameter. Age, and the same will happen to the age. So now I'm going to make another class. I'm going to call it main. I'm going to add a public static void main argument, and this will essentially allow me to make a person S or P, and I'm going to make a new person. This way I could just get the age and then input it whatever I want. So say I want this person's age to be 18, and this person is male, and this person's name is, say, John. Alright. So what this allows me to do, if I click it, nothing really happens. It doesn't really show you anything. But this variable has now gained all of this information. So a way for me to display that is to use the functions that we had before, which is basically the display name, display gender, and display age. So now what I'm going to do is call those functions. I want to call out the name first, and then displays gender as well as the age. And this way, now if we run the program, it should display all the information that we inputted. So now that we learn more about methods and memory fields, we can now talk about one of the more important methods in a class, which are constructors. Constructor is called every time a new class is created in a program. And even though you didn't see it in my person's class, it's because each class has a constructor, and they are made by default if you do not create one yourself. So in order to create a constructor, you must use the same name the class is using, following this format. Now, we're going to go back to my person's class, and then we can update this a bit by creating a constructor. So we can put it above here and say public person And this is basically going to be called every single time the class is made. So we could test out how the person constructor works simply just by adding a code to it. So let's make it print out something. Just a simple hello. Over here, we don't really have to do anything because every time a new object is made from that class, it will always call the constructor first. So if we run the program, it will say hello before anything else that has been done. So we want to actually make it a bit more useful, so we're not gonna just let it print out hello. Instead, maybe we could, take in information from the get-go every time a new person is made. So maybe something like, let's add in parameters here. String B and let's see. Oops. And with this constructor, we can basically do this. Essentially instantiating the state of the class. So as you can see, there's an error here because now we have to match with the constructor. And instead of doing this, we put all the information here. So in the constructor, it's the name first, the gender, and then the age. So let's do John. I keep misspelling that. And the male, and the age is 18. Now, we didn't get it from these functions because we got it through the constructor. And as you can see, it still prints out the same thing. And just to prove, we could change it. Stacy, gender female, and 20. Run the program, and there you go. Now this is just one of many ways to use a constructor, but maybe sometimes we don't want it to input any of this. In that case, we could actually use another constructor using the same name as that class, and this one has nothing. This essentially makes it so that we don't have an error here, even though we didn't input any parameters. So if we run the program, obviously there's nothing, but what if we do the same thing that we've done before? So get age 20, and we'll just use that as an example. And as you can see, it shows 20. This is very useful, and it utilizes one of the lessons that I've learned in class further down the presentation. So now we're going to learn about inheritance. Inheritance is when a class takes up the variables and methods of another class. The class that takes up another class properties is known as the subclass, and the one that is inherited from is known as the superclass. A subclass is usually more of an advanced version of the superclass with more functionalities, or not necessarily more, but to a different detail. We use the extend keyword to inherit from another class as shown in this format. So I've come up with several ways that we could create a subclass for the person. using person as the superclass. So maybe something like this. We can get rid of this areas. So basically, an adult subclass will have more states than just name, age, and gender, such as an employment status and a relationship status, and what job that person has. And then we can use another subclass, also inheriting from the person subclass, or superclass, I mean, which would have the grade level of the student, the GPA, and whatever club he's in. So we can make this subclass by doing, or by making a new class here, calling it, say, an adult class. And as shown in the presentation slide, we are going to extend from person, just like so. So what this does is it gives us all the same states and functionality the person class had, while also being able to add more. So what I want to add in this adult class, just like as I've shown, is I want to add a job state. So I want to know what job this person has. I want to have an employment status. This could be done in a Boolean statement, asking if he is employed or not, meaning does he have a job. And maybe we could have its relationship status as well. So this one could be a string because it can vary from more than just one thing, and we just call it relationship. So he could be married, he could be single, it could be, you know, divorced, anything. And we want to do the same thing for the student class, using person as the super. So we want to create another class here, call it student, and then adding its states as well. So we want grade level, GPA, and what club that person is in. So this could be an integer, maybe first grade, second, third grade. Or we could even do a string, and we could do freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And we want to get this person's GPA, like so, and what club this person is in. So here we made two new classes, an adult class and a student class, but they are still using the same things that a person class have. So if we go to our main here and say we create an adult, we don't have a constructor, but that is fine. We could still use the same functions that the person class had. So we can get age, make it say 30. We can get the gender, we can make it male. Oh, it's a string. And we can get the name. Let's say his name is Michael. So here we could do the exact same thing and display his information. instead using the A variable. And just like that, it shows up here. But we could do more than just obviously using the person's superclass. We can also add our own functionality here by saying public void and then get job. We add a string here, and the job will become whatever string that was inputted. So going back to here, well, first let's make a display for it also. Display job, and that is just to print out the information. So going back to main, we want to get the job of this person and say he is a software engineer, and we display that job. And there you go, it prints out that information. So now we just want to finish adding all the other functionalities of this class. Display relationship. And we want to be able to input get job, or not get job, but get relationship, and say what is exactly it is. And for the employment status, we could do something like void get employed. We do something like a yes no statement. So if y equals yes, then employed is true. Else it is false. Meaning he has no job. And we finish by adding display employed. Print out ln employed. So Michael over here is actually married.